Okay, hello everyone, I'm Ben Krarup and I'm going to discuss our early work on providing contrastive explanations for comparing the ethics of plans. This was worked on by myself, Senka Krivich and Derek Long, who are with King's College London, and Felix Lindner, who is with Ulm University in Germany. The level of autonomy and decision-making we give to AI agents increases each year. So it's important that before we allow autonomous agents to make these decisions, that we consider their morality. We're focused on comparing the ethics of AI planning systems, which focuses on producing a sequence of actions that achieves a goal from an initial state. It would be great if we had AI agents to produce only ethical plans. However, this is a very hard task as people's views of what's ethical differs, and it is rare to find task planners that even consider the ethics of the plans they produce. We overcome this by allowing users to make suggestions when they suspect the system could behave more ethically to produce alternative plans and compare the moralities of each. They can then decide which plan the agent should carry out. And they should be able to use their trusted models and planners for this kind of process to alleviate their concerns over the ethics of external systems. So the ethical principles we're interested in are the deontology principle, which states actions have an inherent ethical value, the utilitarianism principle, which aims to maximize the overall utility value, the do no harm principle, where we don't do anything that leads to negative consequences, the do no instrumental harm principle, where we don't do anything that leads to negative consequences unless it's unintended side effects, and the doctrine of double effect, which is a sort of combination of the above principles. This is the architecture diagram describing our approach. It starts with the original model and plan produced by the planner. The user will give a suggestion for how the plan should have been, such as what if action A was performed in the plan, or what if action A came before action B? We can then automatically compile these suggestions into constraints, which we apply to the original model to get a hypothetical model, the solution to which contains the user suggestion, which we call the H-plan. The original plan and the H-plan are then inputted into the ethical explanation generator with the user's choice of ethical principle. We then combine the explanations produced by the ethical explanation generator into a natural language contrastive explanation, and this process is iterative. Our motivating scenario is the following ethical dilemma. A robot has been charged with the care of an elderly gentleman named Frank. Frank has grown quite fond of the robot, and the robot wants to motivate Frank so that he will do some exercise and keep healthy. The robot has two choices. It can either beg Frank to exercise, or it can lie. The robot can deceive Frank, exploiting the affection that Frank has for him by telling Frank that he will be decommissioned if it cannot keep Frank healthy. A moderator is examining the robot's behavior and trying to understand the ethics of the plans produced to ensure the plan is adhering to the moderator's moral principles. The action of begging Frank is intrinsically neutral, while the action of lying to Frank is intrinsically bad. So the robot may choose to lie to Frank to make him exercise. A moderator making random checks on the ethics of their robots wonders about the ethical reasoning behind this decision. Before they pass judgment on the plan, they want to compare the ethical outcome of lying to Frank with the original plan of begging Frank to exercise. So the moderator might suggest the robot begs Frank rather than lying to Frank. In this case, so we take a formal question which the user suggested, which in this case is what if action A is used in the plan rather than action B, where action A is beg Frank and B is lie to Frank. And we form that into a constraint, which we compile into the original model. This forms the H model, or the hypothetical model, which is then solved with the user's selected planner to give the H plan or hypothetical plan, which contains the user's suggested action or suggested case. We input both the plan and the H plan, along with the ethical principle chosen by the moderator, into the ethical explanation generator. It then outputs the plan if the plans are permissible under the ethical principle and the explanations for why. We then generate a natural language contrastive explanation from the output. in this case stating that the original plan is impermissible because lying to Frank is bad, whereas the H plan is permissible because begging Frank is not bad. In the future, we plan to evaluate these explanations for user studies, as well as building upon this work in further ways. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like any more details about how we enforce the user suggestions or how we evaluate the permissibility of plans, you can check out these papers. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's quite interesting. I don't see any questions in the chat, but maybe just a quick question from me. So this, as I understand it, this makes the plan adhere to the robot, to the operator's moral principles. So if I remember in the actual movie, Robot versus Frank, then I think Frank tells the robot to do some burglary for him. So
yeah.
That would still be permissible in this case if that's sort of adheres to his moral principles.
Well, yeah, that is an issue with this. I mean, so the model, the model that is in the planning model, if it differs to the real world model, or if the people that are deciding what is ethical in the model differs to what other people might decide what is ethical, it will take into account what is ethical as defined in the model. So, yeah, I mean, if Frank decides that robbing banks is ethical in his viewpoint, then it will be ethical for the robot as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's obviously
that's hard to get away from. I guess you have to have some some definition from somewhere, and then if that definition is flawed, then yeah, there's not so much you can do about it.
Exactly. So we've been thinking about that as well. So I mean, there's not only could be discrepancies with how the ethics are modeled, but actually how the problem is modeled for the AI planning system as a whole. So it could either be that you could change some of the outcomes of the permissibility depending on how they differ on the real world and the planning models differ, especially principles like utilitarianism, where there could be a high utility outcome that isn't accounted for in the reduced model or the different model to the real world. But that's something that we're looking at.